She became an MP in 2017. Then she was the Trade Secretary in the Cabinet, and now she is the Shadow Housing Secretary. A warm welcome to you this morning, Kemi Badenoch. Thanks for being here in Birmingham with us. Now, you've written this morning about immigration, and you write that we cannot assume that all cultures are equally valid. So which cultures, in your view, are less valid than others?
Oh, lots. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights. I actually think it's extraordinary that people think that's an unusual or controversial thing to say. Of course, not all cultures are equally valid. I don't believe in cultural relativism. I believe in Western values, the principles which have made this country great. And I think that we need to make sure that we continue to abide by those principles to keep the society that we have now.
So which particular cultures then would you say are less valid? Because as you've said, your words, not mine, some people think that that is a controversial thing to say. So which cultures would you specifically say are less valid than others?
So it's not about labeling cultures. Culture includes a lot of things. I'm not talking about cuisine, I'm talking about customs. And I think that cultures where women are told that they should not work, I would knock on doors. I'm sure Penny and Jake had this. You'd knock on doors and you'd see somebody at the door who says, oh, I can't speak to you, I will get my husband. I don't think that's as equally valid as our culture. But the point I was making in the op-ed was about immigration, that immigration is something which we need to make sure we get right. We didn't before. And there were three things I said we needed to do. One, numbers matter. I was quite surprised that Rob actually misrepresented what I've been saying. Numbers do matter. Culture matters even more. Who comes into the country is absolutely critical. And leadership. You need to start from the top. It's no good simply saying we're going to lower immigration and outsource it. It has to come very much from the Prime Minister himself or herself.
Are you saying, though, that if somebody in their culture who lives here in the UK, who might be a British citizen, who answered the door to you and said, I won't speak to you, I'd like you to speak to my husband instead, are you saying, you have said their culture is less valid, are you saying that people with those beliefs shouldn't be welcome in the UK?
I am saying that if we want to have a well-integrated society, we need to make sure that we have a shared culture and a shared identity. This is a multi-ethnic society. That's obvious. I'm a black woman sitting here talking to you. But there is a difference between being multi-ethnic and being multicultural. I grew up in a place that was multicultural, and yet everybody looked the same. Conflict arises when you emphasize difference. We need to emphasize the thing that we share. Being British, British values, the things that we talked about, freedom, equal rights, personal responsibility, not discriminating people because of their sexual orientation. There are some cultures that do that. I don't think that a culture that thinks gay people should be stoned is as valid as ours. This is not a controversial thing to say.
But aren't you, by making this point, which people will judge for themselves, they will maybe, I'm sure many people will be interested to hear what you say, aren't you, in fact, emphasising difference by making this point? You are saying that if somebody lives in this country already, they answered the door to you here, and they said, I'd rather you spoke to my husband, you are judging their culture to be less valid than your own. You are emphasising that difference.
What are you suggesting that politicians should do in that case, then? That we should just accept everything, that everything is fine, and that we should not comment on what kind of social relations we should have? I don't think that's right. It is our job to make sure that the people who come into the country are people who love this country, who want it to succeed. And I want this country's culture to stay the same. I left another country and came here because I thought it was better. I don't want this place to turn into the place that I was running away from.
You say in your piece also you were struck by the number of immigrants who hate Israel, to use your words. Who do you mean, and how do you know that?
Well, because we're seeing it on social media, we're hearing it. One of the things that I found most upsetting after October 7th was watching people rip down posters of missing, kidnapped children from walls and lampposts in London. We've never seen that here before. I think that is beyond the pale.
How do you know that people who did that are recent immigrants? And if you say you saw that on social media, do you think social media is always a reliable source from where to get your views?
Well, we can get into the nitty-gritty of that. I didn't say only recent immigrants hate Israel. I said I am struck by the number of recent immigrants who hate Israel. It is quite clear that there are many people who have recently come to this country who have brought views from where they used to be, from their countries of origin, that have no place here. It is not just about Israel. I saw, as Equalities Minister, people bringing cultural disputes from India to the streets of Leicester. I've seen it even amongst African groups. We need to make sure that when people come to this country, they leave their previous differences behind. This is not a controversial thing to say.
But the
even
thing that you pick out, forgive me, the thing that you pick out in your own words,
Yes.
you pick out in your piece, you
Yes.
say you were struck by the number of immigrants who hate Israel.
Yes.
Now, we're sitting here in Birmingham, one of the country's most diverse cities. There's an implication there that you are talking about.
I think you're the one making the implication.
No, I'm asking you the question to be specific about who you mean, because these are sensitive topics. It's important to be really clear.
I don't know.
So when you say recent immigrants who hate Israel,
yes,
who do you specifically mean?
I know what you're trying to do, Laura. You want me to say Muslims, but it isn't all Muslims. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play this game. I should be able to say that I have made an observation without you trying to portray it as me attacking a particular group.
Kemi
I know
Badenoch,
that's what you'd like to say.
I'm not trying to portray it in any way. I'm asking you, on what evidence do you base this claim? Who are you talking about?
I told you things that people write, people I've met, observations. I talked about people ripping down posters. We saw who was doing it. We read about cases. I have answered the question multiple times, but I know what you are trying to get me to say, and I'm challenging you that we need to be able to have these conversations without being scared, without running away. And this is what I'm bringing to this contest. I'm sitting here not because of that one line, but because I'm running for the Conservative Party leadership. And this is one of the things that has meant we've lost votes, that we've stopped saying difficult things. We need to be able to speak with moral clarity, with honesty. If we don't do so, then we leave a vacuum for other people who are not, who are not as mainstream as us, to do things that will create even more social tension.
And I'm not trying to get you to do anything.
We have to take the responsibility.
You say, and you have a reputation for speaking with clarity and saying what you think, and that is precisely why I've been trying to get you to spell out exactly what you mean when you said these things. And you're right, it's a very interesting and important debate, but being exact and specific about what you mean, I think, is what people watching will want you to do. And if you don't spell these things out very clearly, as you said, you leave room for doubt.
That's true, but I can't list the names of every single person who hates Israel. I am making an observation that we need to make sure that we uphold our values in this country, and we don't allow it to turn into the place that millions of people around the world are running from.
Should people who hold those views then, are they not welcome in the UK?
I don't think that people who bring foreign conflicts here should be welcome. I don't think so. People who come here should want to live in Britain, should love the country, they should want to contribute and want it to succeed. We are not a dormitory. This is our home. Having people from all around the world just living here in their little bubbles and little groups is a recipe for disaster. I have seen it. I told you I grew up in a country with 300 different ethnic groups. This is a recipe for conflict, and a government needs to work hard on integration. You can't just sit back and say, well, as long as you get a good job and don't commit crimes, that's fine. That is too low a bar.
OK, we don't have much time, so I want to ask you a few brief questions just to close. Should the NHS be free at the point of use forever?
That is a consensus that we have in this country. There are many ways to deliver a free at the point of use service that doesn't require the government to be involved in every aspect.
But does it stand as a principle? Because you told the Times, I don't think we're ready for changing the principle as free at the point of use, certainly not immediately. Now, that implies that one day you might think that that should change, and maybe it should.
It might be that the public decide that.
But what's your view?
I've just given you my view.
That people shouldn't do it yet, but it might one day you might want to change that.
Well, I can't say whether I might change my mind in the future. I'm telling you what I think now.
OK. Will you commit to 3% of GDP defence spending, yes or no?
Yes, we have already. That was something that we committed to in the last government.
3%?
Yes.
By when?
That's not a date that I can give. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is make sure that we start with principles rather than just making announcements and setting targets.
Okay.
We set targets that we can't deliver. People don't trust us.
Okay. And what's the most conservative thing about you, in one word?
Personal responsibility. It is, I think, the value that distinguishes us from all of the left-wing parties, and we don't have enough of it in the country at the moment.
OK, 2 words, but we'll give you them. Kemi Badenoch, thanks very much indeed for being with us. I know it's a hugely busy week for you all here in the Tory conference in Birmingham.
Thank you.
Well,